Hi, this is Andrea from Bless and Health, and I'm here today with Dr. Amber Brooks, a functional medicine doctor who's a pediatric expert and founder of Healing Roots Pediatrics with nearly 20 years of clinical experience in both traditional and integrative medicine. She specializes in supporting neurodivergent children, including those with ADHD, autism, developmental delays, and sensory issues.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really happy to hear what you're about to present to us, and take it away.
You and I decided we maybe just kind of put everything together in a way that gives parents a clear path forward once they either realize there's a delay or they have a diagnosis. I know that is something that over the years parents really struggle with. Where do I start? What do I do? What do I need to think about? So that's kind of what I wanted to do today. So, Andrea already introduced me. So, I think when you're looking for somebody, I would say this as sort of a caveat. You'll want to look for somebody who is working with children, right? And particularly for the neurodivergent children, we want to be looking for the root cause of what's going on, not just really addressing the symptoms. So that'll be what we talk about today. When we go and we think, when I put myself in your shoes, we look and we say things aren't really improving, right? Things feel harder, they don't feel easier. I have a diagnosis, but I still don't know what to do. Doing the work, maybe you're in therapies, maybe you're doing things at home, but you're really not seeing the progress. So let's talk about what might be missing when we talk down those avenues. So I think most of you know what some of these things, can recognize some of those things, or struggling with some of these things that you see on the screen. So, what I always say is what looks unrelated on the surface, right, is often really deeply connected underneath. And so, things like speech delays, limiting foods, my picky eaters, which is about 98% of the kids that come into the practice, right? And I know many of you are struggling out there as well. Sleep struggles, regulation, emotions, making life really, really difficult on a day to day basis. So, something that I always want to talk about as we start is these are not isolated incidents, which is why sometimes chasing the isolated symptom, let's just say speech delays, because that's the easiest thing to say, sometimes just tracking or trying to chase that one thing without putting everything else together that could be going on, that is usually where you kind of hit a wall sometimes. So we're going to walk through that today as to what you guys need to be looking for. As you hear other speakers and things like that, hopefully this will make it a little bit easier for you guys to connect the dots as well. So, pieces of the puzzle to think about. Some of you are brand new, some of you have been through the ringer, so to speak. So, speech, occupational, your regular pediatric visits, behavior support, and specialists that you might have seen, neurologists, gastro, all of those things. What typically happens is you're seeing a lot of people, but there's really not a full picture that's being put together, right? So, how is that possible for you to connect the dots? It really isn't. It really, really isn't. And there isn't anything that you're doing wrong, right? So, today is all about saying, okay, what do I need to be looking at so I can go find the person that needs to connect all these dots with me? I think to this day, at least here where I'm located in Texas, children are getting diagnosed on the autism spectrum and they're only being told about ABA therapy. We're still ignoring all the other therapists, functional medicine, of course, behavior support outside of ABA, or even other specialists that you might need to see. So, this is something that I'm hoping will save you a lot of time as we talk today about things you need to start looking at, because you didn't know, right? You didn't know because you were not given really good direction. So, another thing that happens for those of you that have some experience out there is you might get some progress going, and then that progress gets stalled. You sort of stop, right? And then there's no necessary nearly a regression, but there's not the forward progress that maybe you were seeing in the beginning. And I think that's sometimes because the therapy is helping, let's say, but it's just not enough to move the needle beyond where you're going. So maybe not what you hope for, right? You're still struggling, there's slow improvement. Obviously, the cycles are exhausting. And then there's a lot of hope mixed with doubt, meaning, we were getting better and I was so hopeful that things were going to be great. And now what's happening, right? And so I always tell parents, you're not alone. Many of you are experiencing this, and we are out there to sort of help you get on the right path, right? Which is really important. So let's dive that a little bit more into that. So the other thing that often happens, as you know, is the diagnosis. If you have one, right? You It gives you a label, and the label is really great for seeking out things like getting therapy covered under insurance, right? But it doesn't really explain what's happening, right? Or why it's happening. So a lot of times you're given sort of this diagnostic paper, let's call it a pamphlet because it really is like a book, right? And then you're sort of, okay, here you go. We did our job. You go do your job. And so when we talk about, okay, great, we have a diagnosis, we have a label that should tell us where to go, what to do. And it can connect you to some resources for sure. And it can give you some coverage with insurance for therapies, like I said before. But what it cannot tell you is, where is this manifesting from, right? Why is it there? So a lot of the kids, they could, that diagnosis can be rooted in immune dysregulation, nutritional gaps, neurological inflammation. And it really does explain why one child, let's say on the spectrum, does differently than another child, because the diagnosis doesn't give you an explanation. And then, of course, the support that you're getting doesn't give you the same outcome, right? So I think support is for your needs, not for the diagnosis, right? So support should match your child's individual needs, not the diagnosis label, which sort of goes back to what I was saying before, right? So if you're given a diagnosis and the only thing you're told is go to ABA therapy, that might not be the only thing that your child needs. And that is a sort of standard issue answer, right? That they give, not taking into account your child's individual needs. And obviously, no two children are the same, right? They might have the same diagnosis, but they are not the same. And certainly their root causes are different. Um, so when the body feels overwhelmed, this is something I always like to talk a lot about because it usually makes a lot of sense to my parents. So I want you to imagine that the brain, and you see a picture outline of a head up there, right? The brain is imagining, I want you to imagine the worst traffic, wherever you live, right? Whatever that is, whatever that highway you try to avoid, that one, that's the one I want you to talk about in your brain. So traffic, super congested on the on the highway. We've got car accidents, we have flat tires, we have people running out of gas, we have all the things, right? And so what we need to do is sort of go in and we need to clear the accidents and pump up the tires and get people out of the way so those neurological highways can start working, right? So the brain can fully engage. Therapy is amazing when we especially get a hold of engaging everything else that's going on, cleaning up the debris in the highway, right? So that when you're in therapy, not only are you really benefiting from it, but you're meeting your goals faster. And that is the goal, right? The goal is as fast as you can humanly make it happen, because although we have great services and great people that you can see and you can switch places and what have you, the one thing that we never get back is time, right? That's the most delicate thing to you right now is time. You can't go back to yesterday. You can only change tomorrow. So that's what I want you to focus on. I don't want you to live in this place of, I should have, I would have, I could have. I don't want you to live there because it's really a waste of your time energetically, right? What I need you to do is say, okay, let me take a deep breath. And now that I have a better idea of maybe what some of my avenues could be, or what kind of therapies I need to be looking at, or what type of questions I need to be asking, which we'll go through today, now I can make tomorrow different, right? And that's really what it's all about. It's about doing the best we can every single day. So nobody blames you as a parent, because that's crazy to do that. It's not like you had a book and then decided not to study it, right? You didn't have a book. Nobody gave you a book. And so today, hopefully, some of this will make sense. So as you're engaging with the other amazing speakers, you can also be putting what makes sense for your child into the mix, right, of what they're saying. So let's go on. So when I talk about looking at everything, right, looking at the whole child, your individual child's needs. So nutrition matters. I mentioned that before. So food and mood and focus, right? We look at nutritional gaps, missing key vitamins, minerals, proteins, the things that you need that also affect development, particularly when it's struggling. Gut health is a big one. If any of you have followed or looked at or attended other conferences, we talk a ton about gut health in neurodivergent children. We have decades and decades and decades and decades of research on this. So this is not new to us. This is something we've known for a very, very long time. And it affects everything from behavior, anxiety, learning challenges, gut inflammation, potty training, you name it, it affects it, right? Which is the great news because these are all things that we can improve, right? So if we can improve them, obviously your symptoms do improve as well. The last one I like to mention is immune function. And I like to mention this because it isn't something that we talk about as much from a day-to-day basis, I would say. Someone was asking me about this a couple weeks ago, and I said, out of 18 years of kids that I've seen, maybe 35 to 40% were immune triggered. And what I mean by that is they got sick with something and then were never the same, right? And so was it that flu or that cold or that whatever it was, right? No, it wasn't. It was sort of that last trigger in the cycle, right? That immune system is so full of inflammation that that was sort of the trigger. And so then we started seeing behavior challenges, delays, sensory issues, things like that. So some of you out there might say, yeah, that's exactly me. I would say, and this is just based on my experience, that's it, is it's a much smaller percentage that are triggered by illness, but all of the kids have this inflammation, right, which can affect their immune system. So maybe they get sick more often. Maybe when they get sick, it just hangs on for dear life and you can't get it to go away. They're sick for weeks. You guys are over it in 24 hours, right? So those are the types of kiddos that I'm talking about specifically. A clear path. So let's start getting into that. What does that look like? So the first thing is I want you to understand and look at the whole picture, right? The big picture, the patterns that you notice, what your intuition is telling you. Looking at context of sleep, nutrition, stress, sensory input, relationships, right, around you in your home. This is more like you being a detective, right? And you're not doing this to look for a diagnosis. You're actually doing this to look for clues because the more you see and can identify, when you go to see somebody or you're trying to communicate with your team, your whoever your team is, your therapist, your doctors, then you can give that feedback. So I'm going to give you a way to track this after today so you can sit down and start really paying attention to these things so you'll have a comprehensive list of how to do that. Okay, the next one is to identify patterns. Now, when I say this, that you're going to be a detective, I don't want you to think you have to ace the test, okay? And I don't certainly don't expect you to to look for patterns and find them, but you may notice them, right? And so I want you to start becoming aware that these patterns, if they're showing up several times a week, several times a day, okay, what's happening around that time, right? And start really being aware, just aware of what it is. That is not to say I expect you to identify it, right? Because things like this, sometimes behavior increases or decreases with certain foods that they eat. And many of you will say, oh, yeah, 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 absolutely. Right. Or certain things you notice after they go poop, all of a sudden they're just nicer little humans after, right? Things like that. So these are the things that I want you to start noticing because this will help you know what to address. And your clinician's job is to know that, right? But it really helps parents get on board and understand this way of looking at their child so that you are more communicative with your provider. The more communicative you are, the better this goes, right? Because the more you can tell us. And then the third step is to act, right? Take action, stick to a plan. You've identified what matters. Now you've got your targets, right? Now you know what we're looking for. Are we looking for speech and occupational therapy? Are we looking for ABA therapy? Are we looking for A neurology consult, right? These are all these things that you want to put into your to-do list, so to speak. You're not necessarily looking for an overnight miracle here. We just want steady, measurable progress, right? And so a lot of times with me, I will sort of help parents navigate who to bring on, who we might need. That way, we don't waste a whole lot of time. But there's nothing wrong with you doing this too, right? There's nothing wrong with having those evaluations done. The better, the more information you have, the better, right? So when we look at sort of the steps, and I can only compare this to what I do, so I want to give people an idea of what to expect in general, right? A lot of us in functional medicine are doing very deep dives into what's going on from a complete picture standpoint, right? And so we're going to listen, we're going to learn about your kiddo, and we're going to build sort of a complete picture of what those things are, not just a checklist, but an understanding. Today, you guys will have the opportunity to download a checklist and really just help you navigate your steps, right? And that's for you. But your clinician is going to really dive in deep and then make some of those correlations for you, right? What makes sense for the symptoms that you're having? What might you need to look into diet wise, lab wise? Even modifying things at home, right? In the way that we do things at home. There's a lot to be said for modifying things all around. What to talk to your teachers about, what information to communicate to your therapist, all of these things. So it makes it really nice when you have that whole child approach to it because we're not really missing anything, right? And then you're sort of the navigator, right? Which is where you want to be as a parent. You want to feel like you have some sense of control and making a difference, right? So the more that we are educating you on, hey, this is what's going on with your kiddo. Here's what I see. Here's what we need to do. Here's where we need to go next, or here's what we need to look at next. It really diminishes a lot of your anxiety too, because there's a lot of that already, right? And I commend you for being here because I think this is really important for you to hear the things that you might need to know or the things you might be missing as a way to sort of move forward with a little bit more clarity and confidence, right? Instead of tons of anxiety and fear. Next, typically we do targeted testing, right? And so we look at those functional labs. So we're not guessing at what's going on. It can be a little more strategic. It can be a little more step by step. And there is a 47 item to-do list, right, that I'm giving you to prioritize your roadmap. So it will appeal and apply to anybody out there on some way, right? And so I have it sectioned off so it's really easy for you. So when we talk about also bringing in that therapy support, which I think is really important, getting together your team, right, is important. So various therapies that are out there to be offered to you to have those evals done. So the important thing is really looking at the root cause and then partnering with you every step of the way, right? Getting everybody on board that needs to be on board, for your specific kiddo. So some of the things that parents will say when they start looking at these underlying issues with a clinician instead of just buying the supplement on Instagram, right? Or going to therapy or not even knowing that this is an option, which many of you until today or maybe yesterday didn't even realize that there was an option. So a lot of times parents are feeling understood and heard, right? Because we're not spending the average 5 to 7 minutes in our appointments with you, right? We're not your pediatrician. We don't have 40 patients to see that day, right? We set up our practices very different. And we really take the time to invest in getting to know you, getting to know your kid, and working with you. And in order to have success, I've always told parents, I need time. I need time with you. I need to be able to communicate with you. I need to understand the things that you're challenged with so I can help you overcome those obstacles. Preferably, I do that before they happen, right? So you're sort of geared up. But there's a lot of clarity as a parent that you get going through this. You learn a ton about your kiddo, right? And so in the future, you say, "Oh, I know that this is something I need to be concerned about. I better do this," right? You know more going forward so that you're no longer the newbie parent that didn't know, right? You know now. You definitely know. And you're empowered with that going forward, which is really important so that if something happens, you're not going to end up sitting around for 3 years or 4 years or 2 months because now you know, wait, this is abnormal. I need to do something now, right? And that's a very powerful gift as a parent to get. It's sort of you're building your own roadmap. You're building your own how do I take care of my kid manual, right? Which is really great. And so, and of course, just making it make sense. Because I think what's really hard is getting a diagnosis and then feeling like I'm navigating this by myself, but I don't really know how to navigate it, right? Which is 100% of 100% of you. So again, getting that support is really important. And I think saves a lot of time, don't you think? When you have somebody on your team you sort of can ask and that you trust, it saves a lot of time. And again, that's the one thing that we can't get back, right? Is that time. So this is the checklist I was telling you about. Here's a QR code. We've got, I think it's actually longer than 5 pages because we made some updates to it the other day. So it might be a little bit longer. But it has these check boxes, these various sections, and it's sectioned off by symptom. And then you just check the things that apply to you, right? And if you're like, I don't really know, that's okay. You don't need to know, but it's there so that tomorrow, the next day, next week, you know, okay, that's something that I should be looking for. So if I see it, I know I need to tell my doctor about it, right? Or I need to tell my therapist about it. And so again, it's just educating you so you feel more confident as you move forward, right? You're seeing those patterns that for the first time you're going to be able to connect. You're going to understand what's going on once you start working with your team. And then, of course, where is your biggest priority area, right? I think I could definitely say the number one reason that parents finally say, okay, I can't take it anymore is behavior related, right? It is definitely behavior related. Because I think everything else we can sort of say, okay, they were just having a bad day, or okay, that's okay. But at the same time, sometimes those things just get so overwhelming and you have other things going on in life that it's too much. So these are the things that when I say this, that might be your number one goal. Um, and for me, clinically, when I look at how all of these things are related in the kiddo, my goals are going to be the same, but I'm going to tell you about them a little bit differently, right? Because when I can knock out a foundational problem or start to improve that problem, there's many layers of the onion that get better, right? So functional medicine isn't really about chasing a symptom. It's about getting to the reason the symptom is happening. Why is this behavior happening? Why is this delay happening? Why is my kid always sick? Why is my kid screaming? Why is my kid afraid of the toilet? Why, it's just the list goes on, right? And so I want you to, it'll be like in less than a minute, it'll be in your inbox. But I came up with all of these things over all these times and 4,000 kids or so. So it's been a lot of trial and error and the things that I know that you struggle with and that you see, and how we've made all those connections through all these years. So hopefully this will benefit you greatly because you're coming into it sort of uh, already, already done, right? I'm already done with that. So again, this isn't something that you need to figure out alone. This is by no means go order testing from a company online and figure out what to do with it. Please don't do that. Okay. It's a waste of time and money, and it will actually make you way more anxious, and it may actually make things worse, right? Because some of the things that they might be telling you to do might not be something that's appropriate for a child, right? A lot of these lab interpretations are spit out from a computer, and AI has definitely gotten better, but AI isn't taking into account your individual child, their needs, where they come from, where they've been, and where their milestones are today, right? There's a lot of intricacies in each kiddo out there, as you know. So we want to treat them like the special little humans that they are and give them the best care that we can. So again, there's the QR code so you can download your list. Hopefully it's super, super helpful. Um, And then, of course, you can always reach out to us as well if you have questions. Our email should be in the description. And I wish you guys the best. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. That was super informative, and I know that people are really going to appreciate that resource.
Yes.
That's the first step to taking is finding the right person to guide through this process. And I really appreciate what you said about uh, not
Yeah.
not trying to do it alone. And I see a lot of parents on Facebook and they're, what
Yeah.
about this? And what about this? And who's got experience with this? And, like just trying to throw supplements at a problem or detox before you've addressed the gut
Yeah.
health. And so, like you were saying, these children are very
Yeah.
fragile and there's an order of
The
operations that
order of
really needs to be
operations,
done
that is the perfect way to
to
say
get
it.
the
The
results that
order of
people are looking for.
operations. That's exactly it. I think that that makes the difference. Even parents that say, I've tried quote unquote everything and nothing is working. That's exactly why, right? The right things for your child aren't being done in the right order. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean everybody I've talked to, I think in this whole summit, that are going to be sharing, they always say start with the gut because if you're trying to detox and they're not having regular bowel movements, you're just releasing everything and then they're reabsorbing it and it's going into new places and the symptoms you're going to see are going to start getting worse instead of better, like people are hoping. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm preaching to the choir. Like you can go on and on about, if you
Sure.
don't have the right nutrients, if you're chelating too difficult and you're pulling out the minerals that are already low, and there's so
Yeah.
much. And so I really, really appreciate this. And it's a great way to start off the summit with a good foundational roadmap. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna follow you and
Yeah.
see and learn
Yeah. Of
more
course. Thank
in
you.
the process. Thank you so much.